As the deafening roar of German artillery shook the makeshift hospital tent, threatening to collapse its canvas walls, Nurse Eleanor Ellie Thompson clutched a crumpled letter slipped to her by a dying soldier, its words igniting a spark of purpose in the chaos of war. It was January 1944, on the blood-soaked beaches of Anzio, Italy, where the Allied invasion, Operation Shingle, had turned into a desperate foothold against relentless enemy fire. Ellie, a 25-year-old Army nurse from Maryland, had volunteered after Pearl Harbor's devastation took her childhood friend, her resolve forged in grief but untested in the crucible of battle. Now, surrounded by the cries of wounded GIs and the acrid scent of antiseptic mingling with sea salt, she faced a mystery that could redefine her war. A plea to find a group of Italian partisans hidden in the nearby mountains, their fate tied to a secret the soldier could no longer carry. The Anzio beachhead was a cauldron of mud and smoke, its flat, marshy terrain hemmed by German lines, the air thick with the drone of planes and the distant crack of snipers. Ellie worked in the 56th Evacuation Hospital, a cluster of tents perilously close to the front, where medics battled exhaustion to save lives under flickering lanterns. At 5'4", with auburn hair tucked under a cap and eyes sharp with determination, Ellie moved with practiced calm, her hands steady despite the shelling. In her pocket, a locket from her mother held a photo of her friend, a reminder of why she'd left Baltimore's safety. The letter passed to her by a feverish private named Marco, an Italian-American GI, was scrawled in shaky script: "Partisans, Monteverde, supplies, trust no one." The words burned into her, a call she couldn't ignore. Marco's death, moments after handing her the note, was the first strong event, a jolt that shook Ellie's routine. His whispered warning, "They're betrayed," haunted her as she stitched wounds under bombardment. The hospital buzzed with tension. Doctors shouted orders, nurses rationed morphine, and rumors of German breakthroughs spread like wildfire. Ellie confided in her friend, Nurse Clara Hayes, a no-nonsense Texan whose sharp humor masked her own fears. "You're not seriously thinking of chasing that letter, Elle," Clara warned, her drawl low. "We're nurses, not spies." But Ellie's heart, tethered to her friend's memory, urged action. The partisans, if real, needed medical supplies, supplies she could smuggle from the hospital's dwindling stores. The moral dilemma loomed: obey her duty to stay safe or risk everything for strangers. The hospital's commander, Major Helen Ward, a stern veteran from Chicago, enforced strict protocol. Nurses stayed within the perimeter, no exceptions. Ellie's request to investigate was met with a curt dismissal. "Focus on the living, Thompson. Leave heroics to soldiers." Yet the letter's urgency gnawed, its coordinates pointing to Monteverde, a rugged ridge 10 miles inland, beyond German lines. Ellie's mind raced, piecing together fragments. Marco's unit had scouted the mountains, hinting at resistance activity before he was wounded. Was this a trap or a genuine cry for help? The psychological tension tightened, her grief for her friend clashing with fear of failure, her hands trembling as she folded the letter into her apron. A dramatic event heightened the stakes. A nighttime shelling raid rocked the hospital, tents shuddering as shrapnel tore through canvas. Ellie dove to shield a patient, her heart pounding as screams filled the air. The attack was a near miss, but it scattered supplies, giving her a chance to slip bandages and morphine into her pack, a risky act of defiance. Clara caught her, eyes wide with worry. "You're gonna get court-martialed, Elle." But Ellie's resolve hardened. The partisans, if alive, faced worse than reprimands. She sought out Private Tom Delaney, a wiry New Jersey scout who'd served with Marco. Tom, nursing a bandaged arm, confirmed the partisans' existence. "They're real, but someone's ratting them out." Marco knew. His words were a spark, but also a warning. Betrayal lurked, trust a luxury. The squad's dynamics introduced key players, sowing seeds of conflict. Tom, eager to redeem his injury, offered to guide Ellie, his streetwise grit a contrast to her inexperience. Clara, reluctantly supportive, insisted on joining. "If you're dumb enough to go, I'm not letting you go alone." But Sergeant Frank Russo, a grizzled Bostonian tasked with hospital security, scoffed at the plan. "You're nurses, not rangers. Stay put." His skepticism mirrored Ward's, deepening Ellie's isolation. The group's tension mirrored the beachheads, an uneasy alliance under pressure, each member wrestling with duty and doubt. Ellie's choice crystallized: defy orders and lead a covert mission to Monteverde, or let the partisans' fate remain a mystery. As night fell, a strong event unfolded, building suspense. Ellie, Tom, and Clara slipped past the perimeter under cover of fog, their breath clouding in the chill. The marshes were treacherous, mud sucking at their boots, the distant rumble of guns a constant threat. Halfway to the mountains, a German patrol's flashlight swept the darkness, forcing them to dive into a ditch. The near encounter was heart-stopping, their whispers silenced as boots crunched nearby. Tom's quick thinking, tossing a rock to mimic movement, diverted the patrol, but the scare exposed their vulnerability. Ellie's heart raced, the letter's weight in her pocket a reminder of the stakes. Had Marco's warning about betrayal come from within their ranks? A dramatic twist deepened the intrigue. In the ditch, Ellie found a discarded Italian resistance band, its edges frayed but marked with Monteverde's symbol, a green ridge. It was proof the partisans were near, but also a clue that someone had been here recently, perhaps fleeing or betraying. The discovery electrified her, but Russo's warning echoed. Trust no one. Was Tom hiding something? His knowledge of Marco too convenient? Clara's nervous glance suggested doubt, fraying their fragile trust. The psychological napuga mounted, Ellie's mind replaying her friend's death at Pearl Harbor, urging her to act, but warning of recklessness. The cliffhanger crystallized as they reached the mountain's base, the fog parting to reveal Monteverde's shadowy slopes. A faint light flickered high above. A signal or a trap? The ground shook with a distant explosion. German artillery zeroing closer, suggesting pursuit or betrayal. Tom pointed to a narrow trail, but Russo, having followed them against orders, emerged from the shadows, rifle raised. "You're out of line, Thompson," he growled, his presence a shock. Was he protecting them or ensuring their failure? Ellie's hand gripped the leader, her resolve tested as the light above pulsed again, a beacon or a lure. The mission teetered on the edge, the Italian inferno ready to consume them. As Ellie faced the abyss of her choice, the partisan's fate hanging in the balance. As the fog thickened into a suffocating shroud, muffling the distant thunder of artillery, Nurse Eleanor Ellie Thompson felt the weight of Marco's letter in her pocket, like a ticking bomb, its cryptic warning, "Trust no one," igniting a moral firestorm that threatened to tear her small band apart. The Anzio beachhead, January 1944, was a quagmire of mud and peril, the Allied foothold under Operation Shingle, battered by German shelling, the air heavy with salt and smoke. Ellie's decision to defy orders and pursue the partisans in Monteverde had thrust her, Nurse Clara Hayes, and Private Tom Delaney into a treacherous trek through enemy territory, their path fraught with danger and doubt. The psychological tension coiled tighter with each step, the Italian night a canvas of uncertainty where every shadow whispered betrayal. Ellie's group, a fragile alliance forged in the hospital's chaos, teetered on the edge of fracture. Clara, her Texan friend with a sharp tongue and sharper instincts, trudged beside her, her nurse's cap askew, her eyes scanning the fog for threats. "This is madness, Elle," she muttered, her drawl laced with worry. "But I'm here, so let's make it quick." Tom, the wiry scout from New Jersey, led the way, his bandaged arm not slowing his pace, his streetwise bravado masking a flicker of unease. "Marco trusted me with those coordinates," he said, but his quick glances suggested secrets. Sergeant Frank Russo, the Bostonian security officer who'd followed them unbidden, brought up the rear, his rifle a constant reminder of his disapproval. "You're risking court-martial, Thompson," he growled, his presence a thorn in their unity. The moral dilemma gnawed at Ellie: push forward to save the partisans, risking her team's lives, or turn back and abandon the mission, betraying Marco's dying wish. New characters deepened the conflict, sowing seeds of distrust. At the mountain's base, they encountered Luca, a gaunt Italian teenager claiming to be a partisan scout, his tattered coat marked with Monteverde's green ridge symbol. His broken English and wary eyes offered hope. He knew the trails, but Russo's skepticism was immediate. He's a kid or a spy, pick one. Luca's insistence, my people need medicine, aligned with Marco's letter, but his evasive answers about the partisan's leader raised Ellie's doubts. Clara, ever practical, checked Luca's pack, finding only a knife and a crude map, but her frown hinted at suspicion. The group's dynamics strained, each member wrestling with trust in a landscape where betrayal was as common as the fog. The psychological napuga intensified, Ellie's mind a battlefield of grief and duty, memories of her friend's death at Pearl Harbor, his laughter silenced by a telegram, fueled her drive, but also her fear of leading others to doom. Her locket, warm against her chest, anchored her, but visions of failure crept in. Marco's feverish eyes, Clara's potential sacrifice. What if it's a trap? She whispered to herself, the fog mirroring her uncertainty. Clara sensed her turmoil, offering a squeeze on her arm. You're doing this for the right reasons, Elle. But Russo's gruff warning, one wrong step and we're done, echoed Marco's trust no one, deepening her isolation. Ellie's resolve wavered, the letter's weight a constant reminder of the stakes. A strong event erupted, thrusting the group into their first Zitkani with the enemy. As they ascended Monteverde's rocky trail, the fog parted briefly, revealing a German patrol. 5 soldiers, their rifles slung, checking a radio post. The squad dove behind boulders, hearts pounding, the fog their only shield. Tom signaled silence, but Luca's nervous shift dislodged a pebble, its clatter deafening in the stillness. The Germans froze, lanterns swinging, their German commands sharp. Ellie's breath caught, the letter's warning screaming in her mind. Russo raised his rifle, ready to fire, but Ellie hissed, no shots. The tension was electric. Engage and risk exposure, or evade and lose time. Tom's quick thinking, a tossed branch mimicking a deer, drew the patrol's attention away, allowing a silent retreat, but the close call fractured the group further. Russo's glare burned into Luca. He's going to get us killed. The internal conflict flared, threatening to Roscolati the group. Back in cover, Russo confronted Ellie, his Boston accent thick with anger. You're playing hero with our lives, Thompson. That kid's a liability. Luca protested, his voice cracking. I know the way. Clara, torn between loyalty and caution, sided with Ellie but warned, we need proof he's legit. Ellie's leadership faltered, her inexperience clashing with her resolve. Marco died for this, she said, voice steady despite trembling hands. Tom backed her, but his quick glance at Luca suggested doubt. The rift deepened, the fog's oppressive weight mirroring their fraying trust. Ellie's mind churned, hallucinations creeping, her friend's voice whispering, don't fail them. Dramatic priority built a sense of impending doom. Luca led them to a hidden cave, a supposed partisan rendezvous, revealing a cache of medical supplies, proof of their presence, but also a German codebook, suggesting infiltration. Found it in a raid, Luca claimed, but Russo's suspicions spiked, or planted it. The discovery was a double-edged sword. The supplies validated Ellie's mission, but the codebook hinted at betrayal within the partisans. Ellie's heart raced. Had Marco known of a traitor? The cave's damp air pressed in, amplifying her doubt. Clara's flashlight caught a scratched message on the wall. Traditore, Italian for traitor, deepening the mystery. Was Luca the betrayer or someone closer? The tension mounted with a new event. A distant explosion rocked the mountain, German artillery zeroing in, suggesting their trail was compromised. The squad hurried deeper into the cave, but Luca's maps showed a narrow pass ahead, vulnerable to ambush. Ellie faced a critical choice: trust Luca's route, risking betrayal, or backtrack through known German territory, endangering the mission. Her mind fractured, visions of her friend's smile fading into Marco's dying gasp. We go forward, she decided, her voice a whisper of defiance, but Russo's scowl promised rebellion. As they moved, a faint radio crackle echoed from Clara's pack. Stolen from the hospital, it caught a German transmission, coordinates matching their path. Had they been tracked? The cliffhanger loomed as the cave opened to a foggy pass, a silhouette moving ahead, not a partisan, but a German officer, his pistol drawn, as if waiting. Russo raised his rifle, but Luca's sudden shout, "No, it's a trap," froze them. Was Luca warning or betraying? The officer's voice called in Italian, chillingly familiar, hinting at a deeper connection to Marco's letter. Ellie's hand gripped the locket, her resolve tested as the fog swallowed the figure, the pass a gauntlet of danger. Something catastrophic was brewing, the whispers of betrayal louder than the artillery, pulling them toward a crisis where truth and treachery would collide. As a German flare arced through the fog, casting jagged shadows across Monteverde's rocky slopes, Nurse Eleanor Ellie Thompson realized her choice to pursue Marco's letter had drawn a hunter's gaze, turning their covert mission into a desperate game of survival. The Anzio beachhead, late January 1944, pulsed with the chaos of Operation Shingle, the Allied lines battered by relentless German artillery, the air thick with the damp chill of marshes and the distant roar of war. Ellie's defiance of Major Ward's orders, leading Nurse Clara Hayes, Private Tom Delaney, and Sergeant Frank Russo toward the partisans in Monteverde, now bore its first consequences. A near encounter with a patrol had exposed their vulnerability, and Russo's pursuit revealed fractures in trust. The mountain's looming presence, shrouded in mist, amplified the psychological tension, each step a gamble as new challenges and a relentless pursuit pushed them toward an impending crisis. Ellie's group, a brittle coalition bound by necessity, teetered on collapse. Clara, her Texan resolve strained, clutched her stolen medical pack, her eyes darting to the flare's glow. "We're marked, Elle," she whispered, her drawl tight with fear. Tom, the scout, scanned the trail, his bandaged arm slowing him, his New Jersey grit masking doubt about Luca, their teenage guide. Russo, his Bostonian skepticism now outright hostility, gripped his rifle, glaring at Luca. "This kid's leading us to a trap." Luca, his gaunt face pale under the partisan band, insisted, "The ridge is safe, my people are there." But his trembling hands betrayed uncertainty, deepening the rift. Ellie's choice to trust Luca faced immediate fallout. Russo's defiance threatened mutiny, and the group's unity frayed like their mud-soaked uniforms. New challenges emerged, testing their endurance. The trail to Monteverde's summit was treacherous. Loose rocks slid underfoot, and fog obscured hidden drops. A trap materialized. A concealed wire, likely German, glinted in Tom's flashlight beam, rigged to trigger an alarm. "Booby trap," he hissed, halting them. Ellie's heart pounded. One misstep could alert the enemy. Clara, her nurse's instincts sharp, marked the wire with a bandage, guiding them around. But the detour forced a steeper climb, sapping strength. The first consequences of Ellie's decision stung. Major Ward's warning echoed, her career at risk for this unauthorized mission. Her locket, heavy with her friend's memory, anchored her, but guilt crept in. Had she endangered her team for a dying man's plea? A strong moment of tension erupted with a sudden pursuit. As they ascended, German voices echoed below. A patrol, drawn by the flare, their lanterns cutting through the fog like blades. The squad dove behind a rocky outcrop, breaths held, the cold biting through their gear. Russo's rifle twitched, his whisper harsh. "Your fault, Thompson." The pursuit tightened, boots crunching closer, forcing Ellie into a critical decision under pressure. Split the group to confuse the hunters or stay united and risk capture. She chose unity, signaling a silent crawl up the ridge, but Luca's nervous stumble dislodged gravel, the sound a beacon in the stillness. The Germans shouted, lanterns swinging, and the chase was on, a heart-pounding sprint through fog-choked pines. Tom's quick toss of a pebble diverted attention momentarily, but the patrol's dogged advance kept the tension electric, the group's survival hanging by a thread. An unexpected ally twisted the narrative, deepening the stakes. Mid-flight, they stumbled into Sofia, a weathered Italian woman in her 40s, her cloak marked with the partisan symbol. Emerging from a hidden crevice, she whispered in broken English, "I know Monteverde. Follow." Her presence was a lifeline. Her knowledge of caves promised safety, but Russo's distrust flared. "Another stray? We're collecting liabilities." Sophia's calm assurance, "I've fought since 43, swayed Clara, but Luca's hesitant nod suggested a hidden history. Ellie, torn between hope and caution, accepted Sophia's lead, but the alliance strained the group further. Sophia guided them to a narrow cave, its entrance concealed by vines, but warned of German scouts patrolling the summit. The cave's damp air pressed in, mirroring Ellie's growing doubt. Was Sophia a savior or a setup? The psychological napuga intensified, Ellie's mind a storm of grief and responsibility. Flashbacks to Pearl Harbor, her friend's laughter cut short, clashed with visions of failure. Clara's face, Russo's scowl, Luca's fear. "Am I leading them to die?" she whispered, the fog blurring her senses. Clara's steady hand on her shoulder offered solace. "You're doing what's right, Elle." But Russo's rebellion peaked in the cave, his voice low but fierce. "This mission's a death sentence. I'm out." The internal conflict threatened to Rozkalati the group, Tom's loyalty wavering as he eyed Luca, Clara's support strained by exhaustion. Ellie's leadership faltered, her inexperience a weight against Marco's dying trust. Dramatic polarity built a sense of impending catastrophe. Inside the cave, Sophia revealed a partisan stash, bandages, food, a radio, but also a bloodied German map, marking Monteverde as a target. "They're hunting us," she admitted, her voice heavy. The discovery confirmed the partisans' peril, but suggested betrayal within their ranks. Ellie's heart sank. Marco's "trust no one" rang true. Was Luca or Sophia the traitor? The radio crackled, catching a German transmission, coordinates matching their cave. Had they been tracked? The revelation rocked Ellie, her mind fracturing with hallucinations, her friend's voice accusing, "You failed me." The cave's walls seemed to close in, the fog outside a shroud of doom. A new challenge struck, heightening suspense. The cave's exit led to a sheer cliff path, exposed to German spotters above. Sophia's map showed a detour, but it was longer, risking delay. Ellie faced a pivotal choice: take the cliff, braving exposure, or the detour, losing time the partisans might not have. Russo's threat to abandon them loomed, his rifle a silent ultimatum. As they debated, a distant explosion shook the mountain. German artillery, closer now, suggesting pursuit. The tension crested with a twist. Luca, trembling, confessed, "I saw someone signal the Germans." His vagueness, pointing to no one, ignited Russo's fury. "He's the rat." Ellie's resolve wavered, but Clara's plea, "Give him a chance," held her steady. The group moved to the cliff path, the fog parting to reveal a German silhouette atop the ridge, rifle raised. The greater crisis loomed as the silhouette called out, not in German, but Italian, a voice eerily familiar, echoing Marco's. Was it a partisan, a traitor, or a ghost of the past? Ellie's hand gripped her locket, the letter's weight a call to action as the figure vanished into the fog. The squad froze, Russo's rebellion poised to erupt, the cliff path a gauntlet of danger. Something catastrophic was brewing, the shadows on the ridge a prelude to a crisis where Ellie's choices would face their ultimate test, the partisan's fate and her own hanging in the balance. As the German silhouette on the ridge called out in Italian, its voice a chilling echo of Marco's dying whisper, Nurse Eleanor, Ellie Thompson, realized the letter's warning, "Trust no one," had come alive, thrusting her mission into a crisis where betrayal and survival collided. The fog-choked slopes of Monteverde, late January 1944, pulsed with the chaos of the Anzio beachhead, Operation Shingle's fragile Allied foothold, under siege by German artillery. Ellie's defiance of orders, leading Nurse Clara Hayes, Private Tom Delaney, Sergeant Frank Russo, and their young partisan guide Luca toward the hidden partisans, had drawn them into this trap. the mountain's shadows concealing a truth that could shatter them. The flare's glow faded, but the enemy's presence loomed, forcing Ellie into a heart-wrenching choice as the air crackled with impending doom. The remain event erupted with brutal clarity, a mission turned ambush. The squad's ascent to Monteverdi's summit, a descent into peril. The Italian voice belonged to Giovanni, a partisan leader whose familiarity with Marco stunned Ellie. Luca's confession that he'd seen Giovanni signal the Germans unveiled a betrayal that rocked the group. He sold us out, Luca whispered, his voice trembling, revealing Giovanni had traded partisan secrets for his family's safety. Russo's Bostonian fury exploded. I told you, Thompson, this kid's part of it. Clara, her Texan resolve fraying, gripped Ellie's arm. We're in too deep, Elle. The cliff path, exposed to German spotters, offered no retreat, and Sophia, their weathered ally, urged haste. The partisans are close, but Giovanni knows. The squad, with stolen medical supplies, faced annihilation if they faltered. Ellie's hard choice crystallized, the psychological tension of vice around her heart. Abandon the mission, retreating with her fractured team to avoid capture, or press forward to the partisans' hideout, risking betrayal for the wounded souls Marco died to save. Her locket, warm with her friend's memory, clashed with visions of failure. Clara's fear, Russo's scowl, Luca's guilt. We can't turn back, Ellie whispered, her voice steady despite trembling hands. Russo's rebellion peaked. You're killing us, Thompson. But Sophia's calm assurance, I know a hidden cave, offered a slim hope. Ellie chose to advance, her decision a gamble against the traitor's shadow, her mind haunted by Pearl Harbor's loss. Don't let them die for nothing. Intense events cascaded, driving the crisis to emotional peaks. A dramatic Zitkani unfolded as they reached the cave, its entrance concealed by boulders. Giovanni emerged from the darkness, his eyes haunted but defiant, a radio in hand, proof of his duplicity. I had to, he said, voice breaking, for my daughter. The standoff was electric. Russo raised his rifle, Luca froze, and Clara shielded Ellie, her nurse's instincts battling fear. The confrontation shifted when German shouts echoed below, lanterns sweeping the cliff. Giovanni's betrayal had drawn a patrol, their boots crunching closer. Ellie's heart pounded, the letter's weight urging action. Help us, or we're all lost, she pleaded, her voice cutting through the fog. Giovanni hesitated, a twist that hung in the balance. A dramatic Poryanak changed the tide. Sophia, her partisan resolve unbroken, seized Giovanni's radio, smashing it against the cave wall. No more signals, she hissed, her act a spark of defiance that rallied the group. But the cost was immediate. German shouts grew louder, the patrol closing in. Ellie led the squad deeper into the cave, where faint moans revealed the partisans. 8 wounded fighters hidden in a damp alcove, their bandages bloodied, their faces gaunt with hope. A woman, their leader Anna, whispered gratitude. You came. The reunion was a fleeting triumph, the emotional peak cresting as Ellie distributed supplies, her hands steady despite the chaos. But the cave shook with artillery, dust falling, signaling the enemy's approach. The Napuga soared as the Germans breached the cave's entrance, their officers' commands sharp in the fog. Ellie faced a critical choice under pressure: barricade the cave, risking entrapment, or lead the partisans through a rumored back exit Sophia mentioned, its stability unknown. Russo urged retreat. We're done, Thompson. But Clara, checking Anna's wounds, countered, they'll die without us. Ellie's mind fractured, hallucinations creeping, her friend's voice from Pearl Harbor accusing, you failed me. Anna's plea, save my people, anchored her. She chose the exit, ordering Tom to scout ahead, his scout's instincts vital. The passage was narrow, crumbling, its walls slick with moisture, but it promised escape, if it held. Intense events propelled the suspense, keeping viewers on edge. The tunnel's floor sloped, forcing the group to carry the wounded, their groans echoing. Luca, redeeming his fear, supported a limping partisan, his courage mending some trust. But a twist deepened the crisis. Giovanni, trailing them, confessed to signaling the Germans again, hoping to barter for mercy. I'm sorry, he sobbed, but Russo's rage erupted, nearly striking him. Ellie intervened, her voice firm. We need every hand. The betrayal stung, but Giovanni's knowledge of the terrain became a reluctant asset. The tunnel shook again, rocks falling, the Germans' lanterns flashing behind. Clara nearly slipped, saved by Ellie's quick grab, their bond a flicker of light in the darkness. Emotional peaks crested as Ellie confronted her doubts. In a fleeting pause, she clutched her locket, whispering to her lost friend, I'm trying. Anna's gratitude, you're our angel, pierced her, but the weight of leadership crushed. Had she led them to salvation or doom? The tunnel's exit loomed, a faint glow promising freedom, but a final twist heightened the stakes. German voices echoed ahead, suggesting an ambush at the exit. Had Giovanni betrayed them again? Ellie's choice to push forward or halt hung in the balance, her mind reeling with visions of failure. Luca's sudden cry, I know another way, offered a sliver of hope, but Russo's distrust flared. He's lying. The squad teetered, the wounded partisans' lives in their hands, the enemy closing from both sides. The crisis point resolved in a desperate flight, the tunnel's walls trembling as Ellie led the charge, Anna's hand in hers. The Germans' shouts grew deafening, lanterns casting monstrous shadows. Giovanni's whispered directions, torn between guilt and redemption, guided them toward Luca's alternate path. The emotional pinnacle came as Ellie looked back, Clara's face resolute, Tom's grit unyielding, even Russo's scowl softening. The Napuga reached its zenith, the traitor's voice a haunting echo as the exit beckoned, a gamble between salvation and ambush. Consequences loomed, Ward's wrath, the mission's toll. But Ellie's resolve held, the partisan survival a fragile hope propelling them toward a climax where trust and treachery would collide in the Italian inferno. As the tunnel's damp walls trembled with the roar of German artillery above, Nurse Eleanor, Ellie Thompson's heart sank when Luca's whispered confession revealed he'd hidden a second radio, its signal potentially drawing the enemy closer, thrusting the group into a spiraling crisis where trust shattered like brittle ice. The claustrophobic passage beneath Monte Verde's slopes, late January 1944, pulsed with the relentless chaos of the Anzio beachhead, Operation Shingle's fragile foothold under siege. Ellie's mission to deliver medical supplies to the partisans, driven by Marco's dying litter, had led her, Nurse Clara Hayes, Private Tom Delaney, Sergeant Frank Russo, and their guides Luca and Sophia into this trap, where Giovanni's betrayal already loomed. Now new threats and losses escalated the stakes, the air thick with fog and fear, pushing Ellie toward a psychological abyss as the group faced annihilation. The conflict surged with a devastating revelation, deepening the rift. Luca, the teenage partisan, admitted in a trembling voice that he'd carried a hidden radio to contact the partisans, unaware it was compromised. I thought it was safe, he stammered, his eyes wide with guilt. Russo's Bostonian rage erupted. You've killed us, kid. The radio, found in Luca's pack, had broadcast their position, explaining the German voices ahead. Clara, her Texan grit fraying, gripped Ellie's arm. We're marked, Elle. Sophia, the weathered partisan, cursed in Italian, her trust in Luca crumbling. Giovanni, already a traitor, shrank back, his earlier confession now dwarfed by this new betrayal. Ellie's mind reeled, the psychological pressure crushing. Marco's trust no one rang true, her faith in Luca a costly mistake. Her locket, heavy with her friend's memory, felt like a chain, binding her to a mission teetering on collapse. The moral dilemma intensified: abandon Luca to secure the group, or forgive and push forward, risking further treachery. Ellie's visions of Pearl Harbor, her friend's death in flames, clashed with Anna's plea, the partisan leader's eyes begging for salvation. We're so close, Ellie whispered, her voice shaking, but Russo's scowl demanded action. Cut him loose, Thompson, or I will. The 8 wounded partisans, frail and reliant, huddled in the tunnel, their groans a haunting chorus. Anna, barely conscious, murmured, You're their hope. Ellie's heart fractured, hallucinations creeping, her friend's voice accusing. You led them to this. The psychological Napuga peaked, her leadership tested as the tunnel's walls seemed to close in, the enemy's shouts echoing from both ends. Strong events erupted, gripping viewers in suspense. A heroic act shifted the dynamic. Tom, his scout's instincts sharp despite his wounded arm, tackled Luca to check for more secrets, finding only a partisan badge, proof of loyalty, but tarnished. He's just a kid, Tom said, his New Jersey grit softening, urging mercy. The act rallied Clara, but Russo's distrust held firm. The tunnel shook again, rocks falling, forcing a desperate push toward Luca's alternate path. A new threat emerged. The passage narrowed, water seeping through cracks, a sign of flooding from mountain springs. The group waded through icy puddles, carrying the wounded, their strength waning. Ellie supported Anna, her nurse's hands steady despite exhaustion, but the effort slowed them, the Germans' lanterns flashing closer, their officers' commands chillingly clear. A dramatic loss deepened the crisis. One partisan, a young man weakened by fever, collapsed, his breath fading despite Clara's frantic efforts. We can't save him, she whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. The death was a gut punch, silencing the group, piling grief onto Ellie's shoulders. Keep moving, she urged, her voice cracking. Anna's weight a reminder of those still alive. The loss amplified the stakes, the partisans' fragility a mirror to Ellie's own doubts. Had her mission doomed them? The tunnel's flooding worsened, water rising to knees, slowing their escape. Russo's rebellion flared. This is your fault, Thompson. We're drowning. Ellie's resolve wavered, but Anna's faint grip steadied her, a silent plea to press on. A powerful twist escalated the tension, keeping viewers on edge. Sophia revealed a hidden cache in the tunnel, ammunition and a flare gun, but also a German communique, confirming Giovanni's earlier signals had tipped off the enemy. He's been playing both sides, Sophia hissed, her voice heavy with betrayal. Giovanni, sobbing, admitted to bartering for his daughter's safety, but claimed he'd sabotaged the signals to delay the Germans. Believe me, he pleaded, but Russo's rifle twitched, ready to act. Ellie faced a critical choice under pressure. Exile Giovanni, risking his knowledge falling to the enemy, or integrate him, gambling on redemption. Her mind fractured, hallucinations intensifying. Her friend's face in the water, accusing, you trusted too much. Anna's whisper, we need him, tipped the scale. Ellie chose mercy, ordering Giovanni to guide, but Russo's glare promised reckoning. Intense events propelled the suspense. The tunnel's alternate path sloped upward, the water receding, but the ceiling crumbling, forcing single-file movement. Clara slipped, her medical pack sinking into the flood, a loss of vital supplies that stung. Ellie dove after it, retrieving half, her arms burning, a heroic act that mended some trust. You're tougher than you look, Russo grunted, a rare concession. But the Germans breached the tunnel behind, their shouts echoing, lanterns casting monstrous shadows. Luca, redeeming his betrayal, tossed the flare gun to Ellie, urging, use it at the exit. The gesture was a spark, but the enemy's advance tightened, the officer's voice chilling. They're here. The group reached a jagged opening, moonlight piercing the fog, but German silhouettes loomed outside, an ambush. The escalation built to the climax, the mountain's betrayal, a relentless force. Ellie's choice to trust Giovanni and Luca propelled them forward, but the ambush demanded action. The partisans' lives hung in the balance, their wounds critical, Anna's breathing shallow. A final twist sealed the crisis. Giovanni, clutching a hidden knife, whispered, I know a way past them. Was it redemption or a final ruse? The Germans' lanterns swept the exit, their rifles ready, as Ellie's hand gripped the flare gun, her locket heavy with resolve. The tunnel shook, water rising again, the enemy closing from both sides. Psychological pressure crested, Ellie's vision blurred, her friend's voice screaming, save them. The exit beckoned, a gamble between salvation and destruction, propelling them toward a culmination where courage and treachery would collide in the Italian inferno. as the tunnel's jagged exit glowed with the faint promise of freedom, only to be eclipsed by the chilling crack of a German rifle. Nurse Eleanor Ellie Thompson threw herself in front of Anna, her body a shield as the climax of their desperate mission erupted in a storm of sacrifice and salvation. The crumbling passage beneath Monteverde's slopes, late January 1944, pulsed with the chaos of the Anzio beachhead, Operation Shingle's fragile foothold under siege. Ellie's quest to deliver medical supplies to the partisans, driven by Marco's dying litter, had led her, Nurse Clara Hayes, Private Tom Delaney, Sergeant Frank Russo, and their guides Luca and Sophia into this trap, where Giovanni's and Luca's betrayals had drawn German forces like moths to a flame. Now, with the enemy closing from both sides, Ellie faced a final, heart-wrenching choice that would define their survival. The air thick with fog and the weight of impending doom, the culmination surged with relentless intensity, a cascade of Porionok and Vitecha that gripped the soul. The German shot, a warning fired by a scout, grazed the tunnel wall, spraying shards as Ellie shielded Anna, the partisan leader's frail form trembling. The squad, Clara, Tom, Russo, Luca, and Sophia, herded the 7 remaining partisans in a tight huddle, their breaths clouding in the icy air. Giovanni, his redemption hanging by a thread, clutched his knife, eyes darting to the exit, where German silhouettes loomed. Russo's Bostonian growl cut through. "We're done, Thompson." But Ellie's resolve, forged by Marco's plea, held firm. The flare gun in her hand, handed by Luca, was their last hope, a signal to Allied lines, or a beacon for the enemy. The critical choice loomed: fire the flare, risking exposure, or fight through the ambush, sacrificing lives for a chance at escape. A dramatic twist ignited the action. Luca, desperate to atone, lunged for the flare gun, urging, "I'll signal them." His move was a spark of redemption, but Russo's distrust exploded, wrestling him back. "No more tricks." The standoff was electric, the tunnel shaking with artillery above, dust falling like a death knell. Ellie's mind fractured, hallucinations peaking, her friend's voice from Pearl Harbor screaming, "Save them!" Anna's faint plea, "You're our angel," anchored her. She seized the flare gun, deciding to fire it herself, a gamble for rescue. The emotional peak crested as she whispered to Clara, "If this fails, get them out." Clara's nod, tear-streaked but resolute, was a silent vow, their bond alight in the darkness. Intense events propelled the finale protistoyania, holding viewers breathless. Ellie fired the flare, its red arc piercing the fog, illuminating the exit where German scouts massed, their rifles glinting. The signal drew shouts, but also a distant Allied response. Flares from the beachhead, a sign of hope. The Germans charged, lanterns converging, forcing a desperate Vitecha. Ellie led the group toward the exit, Tom carrying a wounded partisan, Clara supporting Anna. Russo and Sophia covered the rear, their rifles firing warning shots into the haze, scattering the scouts momentarily. The tunnel's ceiling groaned, rocks falling, narrowing their path. Luca, redeeming his betrayal, shoved a boulder to block the pursuit, his effort buying seconds but trapping him as debris fell. "Go!" he shouted, his voice breaking, a samopojurtva that tore at Ellie's heart. The emotional core surged as the group reached the exit, a snow-dusted ridge overlooking the Anzio plain. The Germans regrouped, their officers' commands sharp, machine guns swiveling from an outpost above. A twist deepened the stakes. Giovanni, clutching his knife, offered to draw fire. "For my daughter," he said, eyes pleading for forgiveness. Ellie protested, the pain of Luca's sacrifice raw, but Giovanni's resolve held. "I caused this." He darted into the open, waving a white cloth, drawing the outpost's fire as the squad scrambled down the ridge. The act was a heroic sacrifice, his silhouette fading into the fog as shots echoed, buying them time but leaving his fate uncertain. Ellie's throat tightened, the cost of trust a heavy toll. The climax intensified with a perilous escape. The ridge was a nightmare, mud-slicked, exposed, the fog parting to reveal Allied flares closer now. Clara slipped, her ankle twisting, but Ellie hauled her up, their nurse's bond unyielding. Tom, his wounded arm bleeding through bandages, carried Anna, his grit a beacon. Russo, his rebellion softening. shielded a partisan child, his Boston gruffness yielding to duty. The Germans' pursuit tightened, their shouts closing in, but Allied flares guided them to a ditch near the beachhead. A final twist. Sophia, limping from a rock fall, revealed a hidden partisan map in her cloak, marking a safe path to Allied lines. Use it, she urged, collapsing from exhaustion, her sacrifice a silent plea to finish the mission. Emotional peaks crested as Ellie confronted her doubts. In the ditch, Anna's hand gripped hers, whispering, "You're enough." The words pierced Ellie's soul, countering hallucinations of her friend's accusing face. The partisan's gratitude, eyes filled with hope, bolstered her, but the weight of leadership crushed. Had she saved enough, or lost too much? The Allied trenches loomed, medics signaling, but German shouts followed, their lanterns sweeping the fog. Ellie's flare had worked, drawing rescue, but also the enemy. The critical moment came as she ordered a final sprint, Russo covering the rear, his rifle steady despite fatigue. "Move, Thompson," he barked, a grudging respect in his tone. The climax intensity peaked in a breathless arrival. The group stumbled into Allied lines, medics swarming, Anna's breathing stabilized by Clara's care. The partisans, battered but alive, were whisked to safety, their gratitude a fleeting triumph. Ellie collapsed, her locket warm against her chest, Marco's letter a sodden weight. The consequences loomed immediate. Major Ward's wrath awaited, the mission's risks drawing scrutiny. Luca and Giovanni's fates remained shadows had their sacrifices been enough. Russo's nod, a rare acknowledgement, mended some rifts, but Clara's injury and the partisans' fragility underscored the cost. The fire of Monteverde had burned bright, a testament to courage's price, propelling them toward a falling action where Ellie's choices would face judgment, the traitor's voice echoing as a reminder of trust's fragile power. As dawn's faint light pierced the fog, casting a ghostly glow over the Allied trenches near Anzio's blood-soaked beachhead, Nurse Eleanor Ellie Thompson slumped against a sandbag, her body trembling from exhaustion as the weight of their escape's consequences settled like ash in her lungs. The chaotic slopes of Monteverde, late January 1944, had been a crucible of survival during Operation Shingle, where Ellie's mission to deliver medical supplies to the partisans, driven by Marco's dying letter, had culminated in a desperate flight from German pursuit. The sacrifices of Luca and Giovanni, alongside the survival of Anna and the partisans, marked a fragile victory, but the cost, Clara's injury, Sophia's collapse, and the shadow of betrayal loomed large. Ellie faced immediate reckoning, her choices under scrutiny as the Italian inferno's echoes propelled her toward resolution. The immediate consequences unfolded in the frenetic embrace of Allied lines. Major Helen Ward, the hospital commander, met them with a steely gaze, her Chicago grit unyielding. "You're alive, Thompson, but you've jeoparded a firestorm," she snapped, her voice cutting through the medic's clamor. The mission's unauthorized nature had strained the 56th Evacuation Hospital's resources, drawing scrutiny from command. Ellie, her auburn hair matted with mud, handed Anna to medics, the partisan leader's faint pulse a testament to their success. The 7 surviving partisans were whisked to a field tent, their gratitude, whispered grazie from weary lips, piercing Ellie's heart. Luca, trapped in the tunnel's collapse, and Giovanni, lost to German fire, remained shadows, their fates uncertain but heavy. Clara, limping on her twisted ankle, leaned on Ellie, her Texan drawl soft. "We made it, Elle." Ellie coped with physical consequences first, her body battered by the trek. Medics bandaged her scraped hands and aching shoulders, the ridge's mud-slicked perils etched in every bruise. Exhaustion dragged at her, the warmth of a hospital tent foreign after the mountain's chill. Emotional scars cut deeper, nightmares replayed Giovanni's white cloth, Luca's boulder, Anna's plea. Her locket, warm with her friend's memory, anchored her, but guilt surged. Had her defiance cost too much? Clara's injury, a sprain requiring weeks of rest, was a tangible consequence, her friend's pain a mirror to Ellie's own. "You did what I couldn't," Clara whispered, her support a lifeline. Yet Major Ward's warning, "You'll answer for this," loomed, threatening Ellie's career, her inexperience a weight against Marco's trust. Recovery events sustained interest, weaving hope with new challenges. The squad regrouped in a crowded tent, their faces gaunt, but bonds reforming. Private Tom Delaney, his wounded arm rebandaged, offered a rare smile. "You're tougher than Jersey Steel, Thompson." Sergeant Frank Russo, his Bostonian scowl softening, grunted, "Didn't think you'd pull it off." Sophia, revived by medics, confirmed the partisan survival, her weathered face etched with gratitude. The rescued fighters sparked whispers among the GIs, tales of the nurse's mission, spreading, earning Ellie reluctant admiration. But a new challenge arose. German artillery intensified, targeting the beachhead's edges, forcing the hospital to prepare for evacuation. Ellie, despite exhaustion, volunteered for triage, her nurse's instincts unyielding, Anna's face urging her forward. Emotional coping deepened, Ellie grappling with the mission's toll. In a quiet moment under a flickering lantern, she confided in Tom, his scout's grit a steady presence. "I keep seeing Luca. Giovanni. Did I fail them?" Tom, lighting a cigarette, exhaled slowly. "You saved 7L. That's more than most." The exchange eased her guilt, but a letter from her mother, delivered by a supply truck, reopened wounds. "Stay safe, my girl." Ellie penned a reply, her words halting. "I'm trying, Ma, for them." The act was cathartic, but hallucinations persisted, her friend's voice from Pearl Harbor accusing, "You risk too much." Sophia's gratitude, shared over a shared canteen, offered solace. "You gave us hope." Yet the uncertainty of Luca and Giovanni's fates gnawed, their sacrifices a shadow on her heart. New events propelled the falling action, maintaining suspense. A skirmish at the beachhead's perimeter tested their recovery. German scouts probed the lines, forcing a tense standoff. Russo's rifle held them at bay, his newfound respect for Ellie evident in his steady aim. The clash drained their energy, but Ellie's triage work saved a wounded GI, her hands steady despite fatigue. The hospital buzzed with news. Allied reinforcements were hours away, promising relief but demanding endurance. Clara, hobbling but determined, assisted, her injury a reminder of their shared ordeal. "We're tougher than this war," she said, her drawl firm, reigniting Ellie's resolve. Sophia, now aiding medics, shared partisan intel, a German push planned at dawn, shifting defenses, a legacy of their mission. A dramatic event heightened interest. A partisan runner arrived, confirming Luca's survival, rescued from the tunnel by stragglers but wounded. "He asked for you," the runner said, handing Ellie a bloodied partisan badge. Luca's. The news was a balm, but Giovanni's fate remained a mystery, rumors of his capture unconfirmed. Ellie's heart ached, the badge a weight beside her locket. The event stirred reflection. Her mercy for Giovanni had saved lives, but at what cost? Anna, recovering, sent a message via Sophia. "You're our light." The words pierced Ellie, countering her doubts, but the psychological pressure lingered, her mind replaying the ridge's fire. The build to Rozhevyazky intensified with a final challenge. Major Ward summoned Ellie to a command tent, where officers debated her actions. "You saved lives, Thompson, but you broke every rule," Ward said, her tone softer but firm. "Command demands accountability." The inquiry loomed, a potential discharge threatening Ellie's future. Yet testimonials from the partisans, relayed through Sophia, praised her courage, swaying opinions. The tension was palpable, Ellie defending her choice. Marco's letter was a call I had to answer. Ward's nod hinted at leniency, but not absolution. Russo, now a grudging ally, offered a rare cigarette. "You're all right, nurse." The gesture, small but profound, signaled healing. As reinforcements rumbled closer, their engines a promise of relief, Ellie stood at the hospital's edge, staring toward Monteverdi's shadowed peaks. Physical recovery began. Bandages, rest, but emotional wounds endured. Luca's badge and Anna's words, a reminder of purpose. New challenges loomed, holding the line, facing judgment. But the squad's bond, forged in fire, held firm. The falling action wove toward resolution, Ellie's choices a beacon in the fog, guiding them to a reckoning where the traitor's voice and the partisan's survival would shape her legacy. The echoes of the ridge, a testament to courage's enduring flame. Decades after the artillery's thunder faded from Anzio's shores, Eleanor Ellie Thompson, now a retired nurse in her 60s, stood on her Maryland porch in the autumn of 1964, watching the Chesapeake Bay's waves lap gently, each ripple a whisper of the war that reshaped her soul. The Battle of Anzio, January 1944, had receded into history, Operation Shingle a footnote in the Allied march to victory. But for Ellie, the long-term consequences of her mission to Monteverdi, driven by Marco's dying letter, lingered like the scent of antiseptic in her memory. Now, with gray streaking her auburn hair and hands still steady from years of healing, she bore the scars of that Italian inferno, physical aches from the trek, emotional wounds from lost comrades, and a legacy of courage that defined her life. The ashes of Anzio held a profound truth, a moral etched in sacrifice and redemption. The aftermath unfolded slowly, weaving through Ellie's post-war years with quiet intensity. Physically, the mission's toll persisted. Her hands, scarred from the tunnel's rocks, ached in damp weather, and her shoulders carried a stiffness from carrying Anna down Monteverde's slopes. Doctors in Baltimore's Veterans Hospital urged rest, but Ellie, ever resolute, returned to nursing, her skills honed in Anzio's chaos, saving countless lives in civilian wards. The military's inquiry into her defiance had ended with a reprimand, barring promotion but allowing her to serve out her term. Discharged in 1945, she chose a civilian path, rejecting offers of administrative roles to remain at patients' bedsides, where her heart lay. Her locket, still holding her friend's photo from Pearl Harbor, was a talisman, grounding her through years of healing others and herself. Emotionally, the consequences ran deep, a slow burn of grief and growth. Nightmares haunted her. Giovanni's white cloth in the fog, Luca's boulder in the tunnel, Anna's faint pulse waking her in the still hours. Therapy, scarce in the 1940s, came through letters from her squad. Clara Hayes, now a head nurse in Texas, wrote of their shared strength. "You showed me we're tougher than war, Elle." Tom Delaney, running a garage in New Jersey, sent photos of his kids, crediting Ellie's leadership for his survival. Frank Russo, softened by time, visited once, his Boston gruffness yielding to a toast, "To the ones we saved." These bonds eased Ellie's guilt, but the uncertainty of Luca and Giovanni's fates lingered. Luca, recovered but scarred, had joined Italy's reconstruction. Giovanni's rumored capture remained unconfirmed, a shadow on her heart. Anna, the partisan leader, sent letters from a rebuilt Monteverde, her gratitude a beacon. "You gave us life, Signora Ellie." Professionally, the mission's fallout redirected Ellie's path. The reprimand closed military doors, but nursing became her redemption. In Baltimore, she trained young nurses, her classroom lined with maps of Italy, echoing Monteverde's lessons: compassion over protocol, humanity over fear. She volunteered with refugee aid groups, sending supplies to post-war Italy, linking her to Luca, now a teacher, and Sophia, a community leader. Their correspondence, filled with hope, affirmed Ellie's choice. "Your courage rebuilt us." Yet doubt crept in during quiet moments. Had she risked too much? The letter from Marco, preserved in a frame, was a reminder of her calling, to answer cries others ignored, a nurse's duty beyond the battlefield, the partisan's legacies intertwined with Ellie's, deepening the moral resonance. Anna's leaders, detailing Monteverde's revival, kept the mission alive, her strength a mirror to Ellie's own. Luca's survival, marked by a limp but not defeat, inspired Ellie's advocacy for veterans' mental health, her own struggles fueling empathy. Clara's visits, filled with Texan humor, reinforced their bond. "We beat that mountain, Elle." Russo's rare letters, postmarked from Boston, spoke of mentoring GIs, his cynicism replaced by purpose. These connections wove a tapestry of impact. Ellie's mission, though costly, had saved lives and sparked renewal, proving compassion's ripple effect. Family became Ellie's anchor, grounding the aftermath in love. Her marriage to James, a doctor met during hospital work, brought a daughter named Anna in honor of the partisan. Teaching her child about courage, Ellie shared edited tales of Anzio, Marco's letter on her desk. "Why'd you go, Mom?" Anna asked once, prompting a profound reply. "Because someone needed me, and I couldn't turn away." The answer encapsulated the moral. Compassion, even at great risk, preserves humanity in war's darkness. James, sensing her lingering shadows, encouraged journaling, her pages filled with reflections. Monteverde taught me to carry the light, no matter the cost. In later years, the ending deepened, insight piercing through time. In the 1950s, Ellie traveled to Anzio with James, standing in Monteverde's rebuilt village, its scars softened by time. Anna, now a mayor, embraced her, their reunion tearful. "You're our angel." Luca, teaching nearby, joined them, his partisan badge pinned proudly. The visit closed a circle, crystallizing Ellie's legacy, a nurse who answered a call, paying a price but gaining purpose. The war had taken much, her friend, her innocence, but given back a truth: humanity endures through acts of courage. As she aged, her hospital tales inspired nurses, her daughter, and herself. Compassion's cost is heavy, but its reward eternal. The moral resonated, timeless and profound. In war's inferno, answering a cry for help forges a legacy stronger than steel. Ellie's life, marked by quiet valor, became a lesson for generations. Listen, act, remain human. The ashes of Anzio, though heavy, bloomed with hope, a testament to the fire of one nurse's heart. Inspired by true accounts from the Battle of Anzio in 1944, where U.S. Army nurses risked their lives to aid Italian civilians and partisans, as documented in military records and personal memoirs.